Okay. Brad, would you like to start off then on page 21 in the third chapter?
Sure. So this is the missing link book, and this is the three principles. Mind, consciousness, and thought are the three principles that enable us to acknowledge and respond to existence. They are the basic building blocks, and it's through these components that all psychological mysteries are unfolded. They are what I like to call the psychological trinity.
Okay. David?
Mind, consciousness, and thought are spiritual gifts that enable us to see creation and guide us through life. All three are universal constants that can never change and never be separated. All philosophies are born via these three gifts and are a direct result of the correct or incorrect usage of these same principles. All psychological functions are born from these three principles.
You know, whenever I heard the word spiritual, so often people get it caught up with religious. And I think what Sid is saying is that these are formless. You know, they're formless. And I always tell people that when after I've passed, there may be somebody walking around with a little white box that has my brain in it. But nobody's mind, thought, and consciousness will not be in any little white box because it has no form, you know. Ofer?
Could I add something?
Yeah, of course.
There are a lot of people that sometimes get stopped by correct and incorrect in that paragraph where it says are a direct result of the correct or incorrect usage. Because the question is, how can you incorrectly use something that you're always using? And I think, you know, what Sid is pointing to there is that the awareness that of our own ability to use our thinking against ourselves, to use these principles to create anything. That's the free will aspect of it. And he's not talking about free will here, but, you know, to me, correct and incorrect is sometimes a stopper for people, but I don't think it means like right and wrong. It means using them with understanding or not.
Yeah, I always like to think of healthy versus unhealthy, or like you say, the best, you know, and you can use something, you know, you can use a knife to cut up your meal, but you can also use it to stab somebody. So you can use things in correct, healthier and unhealthier ways. And but I think that's a good point, because some people we're always doing the best that we know how to do, but that doesn't mean that sometimes we don't misuse things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody before we go on? Okay.
Actually, I wanted to ask what Judy said.
Yeah.
And that I really liked your answer. It's a good answer.
So I think Ofer, it's your turn.
Okay.
Did you want to make any comment about that, Ofer, about what you really liked about Judy's answer, or what was helpful for you?
I never thought of it. I mean, for me, there was no correct and incorrect. You know, it's very personal, and so. And I like you gave me like, I actually agree with Judy. I think the correct way is not, for me, like if there's correct or incorrect. It's like about being aware.
Yeah.
That's it. So okay, I'm going to read the next page.
Okay.
Okay. All human behavior and social structures on Earth are formed via mind, consciousness, and thought. In chemistry, two or more elements create compounds. It is the same with the psychological elements, mind, consciousness, and thought. These three elements create psychological compounds that are our own personal psychological realities.
So should I read on?
Yeah, you know, for me, I'm sure others too. For me, just the idea that I had something to do with my experience was the first thing that really hit me as I sat and listened to Sid, because here I had 26 and a half years of schooling and 500 lectures, and had been designated a mental health professional, and I had never had a glimpse that I was creating psychological compounds by the use of my own inner abilities to do that by these principles, mind-boggling. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Healthy compounds, feelings such as compassion, humility, love, joy, happiness, and contentment are all rooted in positive thoughts. Hate, jealousy, insecurity, phobias, and feelings of depression are all compounds of negative thoughts. I kind of wanted to make a similar comment about positive and negative. It's like we don't really, I don't know that you all might see it differently, that I can tell when I'm using my thoughts in a negative way or when I'm entertaining negative thoughts by these feelings.
Right.
If I feel insecure or depressed or sad or whatever.
Right.
But I wouldn't necessarily know that until I felt the feeling. So this paragraph to me has also pointed me to that other mystery, is that I have something to do with how I feel. Right. Whereas I thought I was being forced to feel certain ways by things outside of me before I saw that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it must be the quality of my thinking. Aha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What made me think, Judy, is the old biofeedback machines where people to alter their blood pressure and alter their heart rate and stuff, and that we are walking biofeedback machines. That there's not a judgment on what we're doing, but that we are feeling or thinking 100% of the time. It goes through even neuroscience, it goes through the limbic system and through the senses and back through the cerebral cortex, and we have a thought, and that thought creates the feeling. But it's this cycle, and that we are constantly. It's wonderful that we have that feedback machine, because just as it's wonderful that if I put my hand on a burner on a stove that's inadvertently been left on, that I immediately feel significant pain, it allows me to limit the damage to the flesh of my hand. And we've been given the same emotional feedback system to let us know when we're starting to go towards a direction that's not good physically, spiritually, mentally, or psychologically.
I can tell you a funny story about that, because for a few months, my doctor was requiring me to keep a blood pressure diary while she was trying to believe me that I wanted her to lower my medication. So I was keeping a blood pressure diary, and I had to take my blood pressure twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. And it was all very stable at a perfectly acceptable rate, except this one day where it was just crazy high. One reading. And she looked at this blood pressure diary and she said, "So what accounts for that?" And I said, "Well, I know exactly what accounts for it, because I was watching a political debate on TV." And I was really pissed off. It was not a good time to take my blood pressure, but it was time to do it. And that's so true. I mean, it just was so out of sync with everything in, my normal life. And you realize that goes to your point, Bill, that people that live in that level of stressful thinking and are driving their blood pressure and other bodily functions that we need to have stable all the time.
Right. And the sad thing about it, I was talking to somebody recently, a professional who has, had chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME, as they say in the kingdom. And the problem is it is what Sid says, that people get frightened by their experience, and then they start having upsetting thoughts about the physical experience they're having, which creates more physical unpleasant sensations, which triggers more fearful thoughts about the and they get in a cycle. And it's innocent. It's very innocent, but it's why people in the chronic state of stress, people with chronic PTSD, God love the people that were trying to often die 15 to 25 years earlier than their peers, not from suicide, but from heart disease, from infections, from cancers, because the chronic state of mental stress places a tremendous burden on the person physically, psychologically, spiritually, every way. And it's important, I think, to not be there's no it's like gravity. We're just trying to point to people how it works, and all we can do is do each individual that hears this is do the best they can to go in a direction that's helpful and healthy. That's all we can do, and not judge it,
Can I say something?
Yes.
What comes to my mind is that for me, like, I think when I started getting acquainted with Sid, and I had this notion that I'm not supposed to feel bad, jealousy or insecurity or something like that, because it's like, okay, so if I'm not supposed to think some kind of thoughts, and then so I want, and it didn't make sense, because what came out of it that I was like trying to push away, like some of the thoughts I was trying to push away, and or maybe I would feel guilty about thinking the thoughts, and it took me, I think, quite a long time to understand that it's not about not having a thought or not having an emotion, but instead just being okay. Like, it's like you said earlier, it's like it's not correct or incorrect. So just about being aware and being okay with it.
Yeah. It's funny, there's so many of the veterans that I work with now, Ophir, who are struggling with the fact that they are, most of their memories are negative. They don't have, if they're in memory, their chances are very good, the things that are coming to mind are negative, and a lot of their life experience right now too is negative, because a lot of them are still dealing with injuries and different. And one of them said to me, well, what the hell am I supposed to think about? And I said, you're not supposed to think about anything. You're not supposed to think about your thinking. Just allow thoughts to go through your mind, and if you're not enjoying them, look around, and see what comes up next. Try to be in the moment. Think about what's in front of you. And he's like, well, I don't see how I'll ever cheer up because there's nothing good in front of me. And we were sitting looking out the window, and it had just stopped raining and the sun was coming out. It was really pretty. And I said, well, how about this? And he looked out and he said, well, yeah, that is kind of pretty. It's so simple, that we miss it. All of us do. Yeah, that this moment now is always okay.
The idea that there's a difference between being in our thoughts and being in our life.
Right.
There's a big difference. And
yeah.
And it's not judging it when we are, like you say.
No, it doesn't matter.
It's not about trying to manipulate the thinking. And behind that is some faith that there is a movement from within us of what we're made of towards health.
Right.
That like a cork is meant to be on the surface,
Mm-hmm.
it can be pushed down with force,
Mm-hmm.
but its place to be, even when you go fishing, once the fish gets spits out the cork, the bobber comes back to the surface.
Right. Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, but
Right.
that's the way our mental well-being is. It has a proclivity to head back to the surface. So is this Brad? Is it okay to go forward?
Yeah, it's Brad's turn. All feelings.
Yeah. All feelings derive and become alive, whether negative or positive, from the power of thought. No matter what you think about, it has to be a compound. Even if you disagree with what I say, it's your thought.
It's funny, Sid used to have a lot of fun with that statement. You remember all the times that we would hear Sid talk and somebody would say, well, I think you're wrong. And he'd say, well, you've just proven me right.
Because you're using your power of thought to disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea that from birth to death, we're just experiencing life one thought at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Just seeing that, just having the awareness of it, it makes all the difference. I mean, just
Makes
when
it-
I pull myself back and forth in from thought and then back to the present moment, there's where the freedom starts to show up.
To me, it was a great freedom not to have to battle my thinking. You know, I was raised in a Catholic family where you better get rid of those impure thoughts, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the more I tried to get rid of the impure thoughts, the bigger they got. You know, and it's nice not to have to do battle with your thinking.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I think I love that statement of Viktor Frankl, where he says, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And it is that in that space that our freedom lies. And I think as people have insights into the nature of the three principles, they experience that freedom that Viktor Frankl talked about at a deeper and deeper level. You know, if a man that spends 3.5 years in a death camp where 1 out of 28 survive can say that, and instead of then being tormented and dying young, he writes 16 books and lives to be 92. There's something that he saw about that space. And that's an inspiration to, I think, me.
Everybody, yeah.
It's funny you chose that sentence because that sentence is written on my desktop.
Huh.
And, it doesn't end. You end it in that space is our power to choose and response, right?
Yes.
So it has another line. It says, in our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Right. That's beautiful, Ofer. Thank you for adding that on.
Thank you.
It's funny you chose that one because I have it on my desktop.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, there are no coincidences. Rule 39. Go ahead, David.
Okay. All three elements, mind, consciousness, and thought, are the lifeline to our very existence. It is through these three elements that we have the power to realize the very existence of life. Mental functioning cannot possibly exist without the three psychological elements. They are the building blocks of all mental behavior. There are no more nor any less than these three. They create all human experience.
Ofer, you want to go forward?
Okay. Judy, and you don't read?
No, you read now, and then me. Don't I?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, just.
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead.
Okay, mind, consciousness, and thought are the complete trinity of all psychological functioning. Without one, the others are non-existent. All living creatures, great or small, interpret what they think of life via these three divine gifts.
For me, there's an analogy there with fire, because there's the three elements of fire, and again, fire doesn't work without one of, if one of those elements is missing, be that heat, fuel, or oxygen, then you don't have a fire. You've just got some fuel or some air, or some heat and some air. It doesn't work. Whereas for our experience to exist, all three of the principles have got to be in play. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. And that just really rings true for me. I can just, it's just a really, really simple parallel.
I like that. I like that simile. I mean, would that be, I guess, a simile or a metaphor? I always forget which one. But it's beautiful because that's, I've never heard that. I never thought of that in that way, David,
So what I really love about this is the last part where it says all living creatures, great or small, because I don't know, just the other day I was, the New York Times has put out this incredible video with sound, and it's like sounds of the earth, various things. It has the sound of lava flowing, the sound of water in certain situations and so on. And one of the sounds on there is of an aspen forest. And the forest person who studies the aspen forest said that at one point before they started cutting it back, there were 47,000 aspen trees growing in that forest, but they all came from one seed.
Wow.
Because how aspens propagate is the root system is shallow and it moves along under the ground and then sends up new trees.
Mm.
And she said the question that she raises, it's really beautiful because you can hear the wind through the aspens and it's just really beautiful. And she says, it really makes you wonder what an individual actually is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when I see that all living creatures, great or small, interpret what they think of life via these divine gifts, I think of trees, bugs, and microbes, and you know, that we have no knowledge of how that works with everything, but we know that everything's alive, and that is the definition of life. This energy flowing through it,
Connected to this divine energy, yeah. You know, that we talk about evolution taking, you know, that usually, I don't know, thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, but some microbes can evolve. I think the fastest was like in 90 some minutes or something. It adapted and became resistant to, you know, it adapted, you know. Wow.
Well, and bacteria. I mean, you know, it's really interesting. It's like, as fast as we come up with something to fight them off, they come up with something to survive it. Right.
And I love hearing David, I can't say his last name, the man from England there that was a tree surgeon for years, Ellery. And he talks about how that, you know, if one side of the forest has a fungus, how it passes on the information through the forest incredibly speed so that the trees build up, if you will, antibodies or protection against this attacking force, you know. And we often think of it just as we humans or maybe animals, but this intelligent energy of life is everywhere, isn't it? It's everywhere. Well, shall we stop this chapter here? I want us to, at the end, and especially I asked the three veterans, is there anything from this chapter that you think it's important to comment further on people that we're addressing this to that are struggling with coming to peace with their memories and with their past?
I can make a comment, but I mean, that's my experience. I don't know if the guys would agree with me. I think when I think about what we read now and what all of us said, for me, I think here in this chapter lies something that was very important for me to understand, because I worked with a lot of guys and even myself. So even though I went through a lot since I came back from the war, so a lot changed, but some things don't change. You know? So like most of the time I'm gonna be hyper vigilant, and I'm gonna maybe my responses will be like I will have starter response. Maybe certain times of the year I'm going to get certain thoughts, or even sometimes I'm going to get nightmares maybe. And the thing for me was to understand that, I mean, after I worked with enough guys, I saw that the difference comes not when those symptoms go away, because some of them, at least in my experience, never go away, but it's the ability to accept the symptoms, accept the change. Just not because I see like a lot of the guys, even me sometimes, you try to look back and how you were before the war, you know, or you try to look at other people, and doing that, it's like an opening to get depressed, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think I can't think of the word in English, but it's like the ability to accept that you're not gonna always have the thoughts you want to have, or the response, or the reactions you want to have. Did that make any sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes absolute sense, you know. One of the things that Sid always said was accepting where you are in your journey is what allows you to move forward in your journey. But if you get in judgment, like you said, Ofer, or in resistance to it, it hinders it. And to be accepting of where you are, I think that's very powerful. It sounds like it's been powerful for you to move in that direction. Is that what I hear you saying?
It's yeah, but it's also like it's you have to understand it again and again and again. Okay? It's like every time you have to. It's like a spiral. You have to go. The understanding has to come again, and it always comes. But
comes back around.
For me, it's like I forget, and then I remember again, and then I forget, and then I remember again, and every time my level of understanding changes. Integrated into my life. I can't, it's hard for me to explain, but it's hard not for me. I mean, the key was not to look for like a cure, you know. That's why I don't like people use the word cure, because there's nothing to cure, you know.
No, you can't cure something that isn't sick. You know, when you're just thinking. Yeah.
Even if it is, you know, it's like even if it is sick, you know, even if it is something is not the same, something is not working like it used to be. This is what it is, you know.
That's what it is, right?
Brad, did you or David have any comments that you wanted to make before we move forward? Because I think this is important to hear from you guys.
Yeah, I think this has been, you know, one of the huge places that's allowed me to really start to see the world differently was when I really started to get the understanding with just these three, and reading this chapter. I mean, I must have read it over and over again when I first come across the missing link after you told me to go read it, Bill. Was that
encourage you?
You encouraged me, yeah, but you were pretty direct. I mean, you were pretty direct, and I appreciate that. You know, because I was pretty hesitant when we first talked, when I glimpsed something. But this whole thing is that they're, you know, everything is created out of this. Everything. There's no other way to see it. And that this is the Trinity right here. And for me, that was just so helpful to know it wasn't some other combination out there, that the world was telling me that that's what I need to be seeing from an outside in perspective. And just being able to ground myself in with just these three words and what the implications and what they meant, that I'm alive, I'm aware, and I'm thinking. That was where, for me, was the transformation. I was able to start looking in that new direction more and more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Getting turned around in the right direction is key, isn't it? Because then once we're going in the right direction, it's you know, it's exciting.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how slow we're going. We're still going in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Right.
Any comments, last comments, David? No obligation to, but if you have.
Yeah, no, what I do. It goes back to that piece about positive and negative. And for me, I think it's probably comfortable and uncomfortable in terms of how the feelings are. So if the feelings feel comfortable, then our thinking's probably in a comfortable, good place, or in a pleasant place. Whereas if we've got uncomfortable feelings, then maybe our thinking isn't quite going in the right direction, isn't going to be particularly pleasant for us to experience. And I think that the key bit, as Ofer said, is, you know, we will keep coming around this buoy, because we don't have, you know, when a thought pops into our head, when we first become conscious of it, it's when we've started engaging with it. And at that point, we don't really have any control over what's going to arrive or how we first interact with it. But if we notice that it feels uncomfortable, then we've got an opportunity. You know, there's that space that Viktor Frankl mentions, that we can go, okay, well, why does it feel like that? And just sort of, that's the pause that we get, the opportunity to sort of question it a little bit. And rather than be judgmental about getting caught in that cycle again as the thoughts come back, just go, okay, right, I don't like how this feels at the moment, but I know it will pass, because it always has done in the past. And I don't need to do anything to stop it from, there's nothing I need to physically do or mentally do to make this go away. It will just pass. Just chill. And, as Judy said, look out the window and see if the weather's changed. There'll be something that will, in your surroundings, that will help you see things slightly differently. And it's just giving yourself that breather and not being judgmental with yourself.
That's a beautiful way. That's a nice way to end.